In this video, we are going to talk about the inner join. Um, so again, here we have the small or simple company database with the customer table and invoice table. And what we want to do is write a SQL query to display a table listing all of the invoice numbers and amounts. So that's in this table, invoice, along with the customer number and customer name associated with each invoice. So if all they wanted were the customer numbers or the inventory number, customer number, and inventory amounts, all of that's contained in the invoice table, and that would be really easy, right? We would just do select and then the things that we wanted: invoice number, invoice amount, and customer number from invoice. And that's it. That's all we would have to do. But we also want the customer's last name and first name. And that's only contained in this customer table here. Okay. So what we're going to have to do is to join these two tables together. So the first thing that we could do is to list the two tables here, invoice and customer. And remember, what that's going to do is take the Cartesian product of all the tables, and that's not quite what we want. So, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how that looks when we do that. I'm going to have to get rid of this writing right here. So let's see, what else we wanted the customer's name. So let's put that in F name and cust L name. All right, so that will pull out the last name. So just making sure that we get everything that we want: invoice numbers, invoice amounts, customer number, and customer name associated with each invoice. Okay, so that's good. So now I'm going to erase this writing here because otherwise it won't work. All right, and let's see if I can switch here. Okay, and so when I went to take a look at the design view, I got this error here. It says the specified field cust num could refer to more than one table listed in the from clause of your SQL statement. So the issue that it's having is that cust num, right, belongs to not only invoice, right, but also customer right here. It's in both spots right here. So it could get confused. So one of the things that you could do is to type which table you want to pull it from. Okay, so we're going to pull it from invoiced cust num, or we could pull it from customer. It's in both spots. Okay, so that will allow it to do that. Okay, and so when I run the query, here's what I get. So I get all of the products in here. So 8,000, right? That invoice number, it's going to join it with both lines up here. So here's where it's joined with the first line, Gene Smith, right? And here it's joined with Juan Ortega, or yeah, here. So these first two records are where the first row here is joined with the first row here, and the second one is where the first row of invoice is joined with the second row of customer. And then it does that for each one inside there. I'm going to go back and alter this, go back to the SQL view, and I'm going to list both of these things in here. Invoice dot custom. All right, I'm going to run this again. So now you can see here the records that we want inside here. So this is the product of all of them, but we really don't want these two to be together, right? Because they have different customer numbers. This 8,000 is from customer number 1,000, and that's Gene Smith, not Juan Ortega, right? So we really don't want this record in here, and we don't want these records in here. So what we really want is only those records where both of these invoice, the customer number from invoice and the customer number from the customer table, agree with each other. Okay, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do. But sometimes it helps when you're doing these queries just to go ahead and list all of it out and then just kind of keep refining the query until you get it down to what you want. All right, so let's go back to the SQL view. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is have where clause below the from clause like we had before, right? And then I want to have invoice custom equals customer dot custom. So now it's only going to select those records where the invoice out of the product of these two where they agree. So let's run that and see what we get. And that's exactly what we want right here. Right? So we have all of the invoices for Gene Smith listed nicely in there with their inventory numbers and inventory amounts here. And then here down below we have all of the invoices associated with Juan Ortega. These two here, 8001, 8002. Okay? So what we did, right, essentially was in this style of query was we basically did the product of the invoice and customer table, and then we used the where clause to filter out those ones that didn't match. We wanted only those where the two customer numbers were the same because those were the invoices associated with those customers. Okay. I just want to show you a little bit of extra things in here before we move on to the inner join statement. You can, instead of writing a lot, so instead of having to write invoice dot whatever all the time or customer all the time, you can use the as clause here. So from invoice as I, and then you can use I as an abbreviation for invoice and C as an abbreviation for customer inside there. And so that will just save you from having to type out so much, especially if you have a really complicated query. So just run that. And you can see we get exactly the same thing that we had before. All right, there is also another way to do this, and that's using the inner join. And so on the inner join, we would, instead of listing the two tables with a comma inside there, you would use inner join. And then instead of using the where, you would use I, like that. Okay, it basically accomplishes the same thing. So you can use, either way you want. This is a sort of a newer style of SQL to do things this way. But you can see we get exactly the same results there. And so this is what is called an inner join. An inner join where you want only those records that match some condition. In this case, the condition is that the customer number on the invoice matches the customer number in the customer table there. And that will allow you to filter that out and look at all of the invoices along with their associated customers. So that's a way in which, you can get information from multiple tables is using the inner join on some condition there.